In 2013, a colloquium on the study of unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs, was organized featuring prominent NASA scientists, aviation professionals, military officers, and tenured professors to examine the safety of our skies. The footage mysteriously went missing. In 2023, one partially damaged drive was found. This is the recovered footage.
What I'm going to do today is tell you basically what happened to me, my experience in 1980 at RAF Bentwaters. I'm going to tell you the story as I know it, then I'm going to bring you an update because there's some recent material that's come out and information. Then I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask me some questions because there's some very interesting twists on this and a great deal of disinformation, and I can shed some light on some of that probably. Let me start by describing the bases. First, I'll say in 1980, actually in the late 70s, I was selected for special career monitoring, which meant good chances for promotion and special assignments. I was reassigned from the Pentagon to RAF Bentwaters, as mentioned earlier, as a deputy base commander. At that time, RAF Bentwaters was a big hub of activity. The base was comprised of approximately 13,000 military and civilian people. It's a big operation. Actually a small city. We had everything from, you name it, the BX commissary to a K through 12 school. Just a little bit of everything. It was a slice of America, I guess is the best way to put it, sitting in England. That doesn't mean we didn't get off base and do a lot of things. It was very interesting. The base had A-10 aircraft at that time. In addition to RAF Bentwaters, we had a sister base which was part of the 81st TAC Fighter Wing, located at RAF Woodbridge, about 1.5 miles to 2 miles away, separated by the equivalent of a national forest. In addition to the 2 bases in England, we had 4 forward operating locations in Germany where we kept at least 6 airplanes, crews, maintenance people, and all the time. And we had 2 additional FOLs that were mothballed, ready to go with all the equipment. Our mission was, if the balloon went up, to move forward with everything and go kill armor. Keep in mind, this was 1980, the peak of the Cold War. There was a lot of turmoil in Europe, turmoil worldwide. Solidarity was challenging the Polish government, and there was a great deal of tension focused on what was going on in Europe. And we were constantly under the gun. We exercised forever. I thought the command post was my second home, to be very honest with you. We spent so much time there. But all in all, it was a very good assignment. I really enjoyed it, and I look back with fond memories. Part of my job as a base commander was to see that the base functioned smoothly. The base commander cut ribbons, shook hands, kissed babies, gave speeches, did all those kind of things. I scurried around, wrote the speeches, spent countless hours riding with police patrols, visiting the fire department, the dining halls, the weapons storage areas, and things like that. So I had the pulse of the base. That was my job. It was also grooming me to be the base commander someday, which did happen. On the morning of December 26th, 1980, I got up early like I normally did, and I went down to the police station, and I went into the police station, and the desk sergeant started laughing. And I knew him. He had quite a sense of humor. Crash McCabe. Crash was his nickname. I said, "What's so funny, Crash?" He said, "Colonel, you're not going to believe this." He said, "Burroughs and Peniston and Cabanas were out in the woods chasing UFOs all night, and the lieutenant, who was the supervisor, said, 'Don't put anything in the blotter.'" I said, "What? What do you know about this?" He said, "Well, there were some lights. They thought an airplane crashed. Not really sure." I said, "We've got to put something in the blotter and document this." So he put something in the blotter. I don't remember the exact wording because those blotters later disappeared. Something to the effect about lights in the forest were investigated and so on. And I didn't think too much of it. I thought there was an explanation. I collected the blotters, took them up to the office, and we all had a chuckle over it. You know, okay, the cops thought they saw a UFO or something. I was a skeptic, I guess is the best way to put it. The next day or so, there was a lot of rumor going around the base, and I discovered the cops were all looking to the sky instead of looking at the airplanes or the weapons or whatever they were supposed to be doing. And we started to get a bit concerned. The following day or evening, we had the end of the year party. It was a family affair, cover dish dinner. to recognize accomplishments during the year and single out people and give people a pat in the back. We just finished the main meal, and we're sitting down getting ready to have dessert and to do some presentations when the on-duty flight lieutenant, the cop, came in. He was white as a sheet, Bruce England. Now, Bruce was not an excitable guy. Bruce had spent 4 years in the Marine Corps, gone on the GI Bill back to school, and then came into the Air Force. He's pretty mature, probably the most mature cop we had. He said to the base commander and I, "It's back." I said, "What's back?" He said, "The UFO is back." He said, "Bruce." We went into the cloakroom because it was the only private place in that area, and he described how they saw funny lights in the forest and so on, and they went out. And first thing I said is, "You went off the base again?" I was quite shocked. Yes. Well, let's go back to the first night. After I found out and had an experience myself, I brought in the parties that actually saw something on the night of, or morning of the 26th of December, Peniston, Burroughs, and Cabanas. I interviewed them independently and took statements from them and all the people that were on duty. And let me tell you, here's what they told me. First of all, I need to tell you that the police, security police in the Air Force, have two different career fields. Law enforcement, which are cops as you and I know, write tickets, answer domestics, DUIs, investigate crime, you name it, carry a sidearm and a nightstick, and do the normal things cops do. The Air Force has another division in the police called security police. The security police are armed with automatic M16s, well M4s now, and wear fatigues. They guard the weapons, they guard the airplanes, and in certain cases, certain areas, they are authorized on their judgment to use deadly force. I think I've said enough to tell you about that. So Bruce England was carrying an M4 and M16 at that time. But anyhow, the two bases had a back gate between them. Here's a picture of the two bases. You can see there's Bentwaters, there's Woodbridge. There's the forest in between. To go from one to the other, the normal route would be a way around here, a good hard road. We had a back gate on both that went across through here. Now, we don't have the manning to keep the back gate open 24 hours a day, so we would lock the back gate, usually at dark, and open it up in the morning so the maintenance people could take a shortcut back and forth or bring equipment back and forth. So part of the job of the police at Bentwaters at night were to guard the back gate and go up on their hourly check and check the security of the gate, because the maintenance people would always find the combination to the lock, open the gate and leave it open, and of course that caused all kinds of problems. So on the night of the 25th, morning of the 26th, John Burroughs, who was police 4, went up to the back gate to check the lock. He noticed when he got to the gate, lights in the forest. A bright white light, blue, green, and red lights. First thing he thought was an aircraft had crashed. So he ran back up to the gate, got on the hardline phone rather than his radio, called the desk sergeant and said, "I think there's an airplane in the forest." And Crash McCabe said, "Let me call the tower." So he called the tower, and the tower said, "No, nothing's flying, nothing in the forest." They called Central Security Control, "No, nothing in the forest." They called London Heathrow, "No, nothing flying in the area." They called RAF Watersham, who had air defense for that sector, "Nothing in the area, clean." Well, the supervisor comes up, Police 5 comes up, Jim Peniston comes up, who was then the flight line security supervisor, and there's probably 8 or 10 of them at the gate. They're standing there scratching their heads, and they all agree there's something out in the forest. So it's decided that Peniston and Burroughs and Cabanas will go investigate. So the Master Sergeant J.D. Chandler, who was present, collects the weapons from them all, because we didn't take weapons off base knowingly. And they went out into the forest with a 6-pack truck. They went out the back gate. They drove down the East Gate Road, down and then into the forest. They parked the truck on a Forest Service road, and they went into the forest. Now, what happens from here on is subject to interpretation, and there are several different versions. What they told me at the time, and what their statements initially said, was that they saw a craft. They saw something that was triangular, about 9 feet on the side, about 6 feet high, on the equivalent of a tripod, sitting there with multiple colored lights on it. They were having difficulties with the radio, so they had dropped Cabanas off about halfway out back as a radio relay. Now, this was kind of unusual because the radios are line of sight and they normally work very well in that area, but who knows. Anyhow, Peniston claims that he took pictures because he did carry a camera. The flight line supervisor at Woodbridge and Bentwaters always carried a 35mm camera. The reason being, quite a few Brits came over the fence to take pictures of airplanes and things, so what we would do is we would take a picture of them, apprehend them, and turn them over to the British police. They were never a big problem, just it was an irritant, I guess. So he had a camera. He took multiple pictures of the craft. He may or may not have taken notes. That's the subject of contention. But anyhow, something happened to them. We're not really sure. They had some type of a confrontation. Cabanas said that Burroughs was beamed up into this craft. We do know that there was about 45 minutes of time lost where they lost contact with the base, and those at the gate were getting ready to send a party out to hunt for them. Now, the stories of what happened there have changed significantly through the years, so I really can't say a whole lot, but I'll answer some questions later and tell you what I think. They came back in and went back, and they were probably never the same after that. And we'll get into that a little later. So let's go back to the party 2 nights later. When Bruce England came in and collected the base commander and I and took us into the cloakroom, the boss had to give a speech and give some presentations, so he looked at me and said, I said, I know, go out and put this thing to rest, explain this thing. I was sure there was an explanation, and get everybody back on track and put all this nonsense behind us. So I went home and changed clothes. Before I did, I went to the security police chief who was there, Mel Zickler, and I said, I want one of your senior NCOs and somebody else to come with me that knows what's going on, and I'll go with Bruce England, the lieutenant. And I went to the disaster preparedness officer and said, who is your standby person? They always had somebody on standby. And they said, Sergeant Nevels. I said, well, I knew Nevels from exercises. I said, have him go to the office, collect an APN-27, a Geiger counter, and to bring his camera. Nevels had worked for the base photography, or the base photo lab, and done some stuff for the newspaper and had a degree in photography. So I went home, they picked me up in a Jeep, we went down and got Nevels, took a Geiger counter, crossed the base, went out back gate at Bentwaters, the Woodbridge, crossed Woodbridge base to the back gate. We went out to the back gate, down in the Forest Service Road and into the forest. Well, lo and behold, there are 2 light-alls there. Light-alls are motor generators with big fluorescent lights on top. We use them on a flight liner for work or to illuminate a plane. Probably 10 or 15 people, a Jeep and 2 or 3 6-pack trucks. I thought, oh my God, this is a public relations disaster. If we get caught out in the forest in the middle of the night and someone puts this in the paper, we'll never get done explaining it. So, and they're telling me, well, it was over there in the forest. I said, well, first of all, I want you all to stay here and be very quiet. And the 5 of us will go forward. They said, well, the landing site's up there. So the 5 of us went forward. And we found this site where they showed me indentations. 3 indentations approximately, that big in diameter, 8 or 9 feet apart, perfect triangle, and whoa. So we're looking at them, and we're taking notes, and I'm carrying my pocket recorder. Everywhere I went in the base, I normally carried my pocket recorder because it was a lot easier than taking notes. We just got in the new linear system, a dictaphone system, and so I would take notes and go back, give the secretary the tape, and she would tape it up, and we would task people to fix or whatever needed to be done. So we're standing there, and we're looking around. I said, well, this is spot 1, spot 2. And while we're there looking and measuring things, discovered that the indentations have a higher radiation reading than the surrounding area, and the triangle, center of the triangle formed by the 3 indentations has even higher readings. We go to the trees and the side of the pine trees. These are tall Corsica pines, about so big. The readings on the inside of the tree toward the supposed landing site are higher, slightly higher than the back side of the trees. I said, whoa, how do we explain this? And while we're doing all this, one of them, I believe it was Bruce England, said, look over there, there's a bright object, a red object, it's glowing. What? So we look at it with a starlight scope, a first generation night vision scope, and it's pretty bright. It almost burns your eyes. We look at it closely and it appears it's oval, about so big, a little bigger than a basketball. It has a dark center, sort of like an eye, a black center like a pupil. And it appears to be winking. This is unbelievable. Could this be ball lightning? And we notice that it's dripping the equivalent of molten metal, just dripping off this thing. So, whoa, how do I explain this? And I'm thinking, boy, why did I ever get involved? Why didn't I send somebody else out here? Nobody's going to believe this. While we watch it, it starts moving. It comes toward us into the forest. It had been out in the farmer's field. It moves through the trees, bobbing up and down occasionally, avoiding the trees. Thinking, this is unreal. This can't be. At one point, it comes toward us. Then it recedes back. And so I say to the other four, I said, let's try and get close to it. So we move up to the edge of the field, and of course, it moves away from us. We're standing there watching for maybe a minute or two, and silently explodes into 5 white objects like fireworks. No noise, and it disappears. The whole time we were watching it, there was a farmer's house directly across the field, and the reflection was so great, like a flickering fire in his windows, that I was concerned for the people in the house. Well, I said, let's go out into the field and see if we can find any evidence of whatever was dripping off this thing. Perhaps there's some burn marks on the ground or some slag or whatever. We went out into the field, looking around, and all we found were evidence that the cattle had been there. We didn't find any evidence at all. And while we're out in the field, it's one of us, I don't remember who, notices that there's 3 objects up in the sky to the north that are moving in synchronous at very high speed and making 90-degree turns, sort of like a grid search. They look elliptical. They have multicolored lights on. They turn to full circles, all 3 of them simultaneously while we're watching. I thought, wow. Meantime, I've been on the command post, on the radio, talking to the command post, and I say, look here, have the Eastern Radar, air defense guys, and the tower, focus in this area and tell me what they see. And they keep telling me, well, nobody sees anything. Oh, come on, we're watching this. It's not coming down, they're going up, they're going over. Then we notice 2 to the south. One of them in the south comes overhead at very high speed. I mean very high speed. It comes from almost like nowhere, way out there to overhead. And it's stationary suddenly. And as we're standing there, it sends down a beam. Best way I can describe it is like a laser. A beam about so big, right over there. And we're standing there in awe, and I'm thinking, wow, is this a weapon? Some method of communication? A warning? What is this? And just as suddenly as it appeared, it disappears. Just clicked like somebody turned it off. The object to the south moved over more toward our right and sent down beams in or near the weapons storage area. And I can hear chatter because we have 3 different radios with us, 3 different nets. Me on the command post net, Bobby Ball, the master sergeant, was on the security net, and then I believe Emma Kavanasak was on the law enforcement net. But anyhow, we have 3 different radios, and I can hear chatter on the police radios about them seeing things too in the WSA. And I later found out that they did see something bright red in the tower. The WSA had a tower, and I'll show you some pictures of these things a little later. And several of the cops saw something too. So, wow, what are we going to do? How are we going to explain this? And I'm thinking, this is the end of my career. Nobody will believe this. And I think, maybe I don't have to say anything, but the problem was I've been on the radio all the time, and all the senior officers have already tuned in. They were listening to this, and so was the command post, and the command post puts everything on tape. So I was stuck. So, what do? We were out there probably for 3 hours, somewhere around there. I don't think we had any missing time. We did not see that night a structured craft as such. In other words, I didn't see anything metallic, or I didn't see anything that looked alive. I just saw something that was under intelligent control, not like the first night. Now, trying to put this all together, it didn't make much sense to me. A structured craft, an object in the forest that glows and drips, objects in the sky that send down beams. How does this all relate together? I really don't have an answer for that, unless there's a mothership or something up there doing all this. I don't know. And I've never really figured out the purpose, but I do have some ideas. I've gone back later. I went and met I've been told it was a lighthouse. That's almost a joke. The lighthouse was over there. The object was over here. The lighthouse was 3 or 4 miles away. How would a lighthouse reflect light off the farmer's windows on this side when it's over there? I went and looked up the lighthouse keeper, Keith Siemens, and his wife, and had a drink with them. Said, Keith, here's what happened to me. Tell me about the lighthouse. And he said, the lighthouse has 3 different lenses. It has a white light, a green light, and a red light. It is shuttered. You cannot see the green light and the red light. They're navigational lights, and if anybody has a boat, they probably know what it means. I don't. And he said, from where you were, you might have been able to occasionally see the white light. Perhaps. Probably not. So anybody that talks about the lighthouse can forget about the lighthouse. Besides, who's ever seen a lighthouse move through the forest or go up in the sky and send down beams of light? Later I found out, now this didn't happen until last year, I believe it was. A gentleman by the name of Robert Hastings, who's wrote a book some of you may have read, UFOs and Nukes, discovered the air traffic controllers and interviewed them. And I want to read you their statements that he collected from them. You'll find them most interesting. This is the first time retired controller's testimony has been published. Jim Carey, one of the air traffic controllers, told me, at the time I was a tech sergeant, an air traffic controller with the 2164th Communications Squadron, the other controller was named Ike Barker. A major named, and we'll delete his name because he and I are going round and round over some things, was also there. In fact, why was he there? He was a supervisor of flying. We hadn't been flying for 2 days. What was he doing in the tower with the radio at 2 o'clock in the morning? But anyhow, I think the incident happened between 10 and 12 o'clock. I remember right. Ike and I usually worked to 6 p.m. to midnight. It was during the holidays when we had to work 8 or 9 hours, but I recall it happened before midnight. And he continued, what I remember seeing was a very fast object on the radar we had in the tower. The scope was variable, it had a zoom display range. It had been set at 60 miles. When the object first appeared, it came from the east, went straight across the scope and disappeared off the left side. It took maybe 4 seconds. Each sweep, woof, was 2 or 3 seconds. That's a sweep of the radar. It covered 120 miles. Can you believe that? That means about 3,600 miles an hour. In the 15 years I was an air traffic controller, I'd never seen anything travel across the scope so fast. A few seconds later, it came back across the scope, retracing its course west to east at the same speed. Then I think maybe half or 3/4 of the way across, it did an immediate right-angled turn, 3,600 miles an hour, and headed south off the bottom of the screen. I mean, it turned just like that instantly. We couldn't believe it. Okay, that's not one of ours, he says. Carey continued. So that's all I remember except for the chatter on the radio. I think the Major's handheld radio was tuned to the command net. It was. Then I'm going to go back and read what his compadre says. His compadre actually watched the ball-shaped glowing orange object approach the tower, stop over the water tower on the base, then go out into the forest, and it descended into the forest where we were. This didn't come out until last year. I wish I'd known years earlier because people kept telling me, you know, you're crazy, you didn't see things, you did this, did that, whatever. Also, we found out and dug out that the RAF operator, RF Watersham, that was on duty the night I was out, has said he remembers now, he had his dates mixed up, he did pick up a bogey and it did disappear off the scope near RAF Woodbridge. So there's another independent confirmation that there was something seen on radar and it went into the forest. Well, what happened? I came back to the base, got a couple hours sleep, couldn't sleep well that night, got up early in the morning, probably 8 or 9 o'clock, went into the office. Now our office had 2 wings and there was a foyer in the middle. And when I went into the foyer, my boss, General Williams, who was the wing commander, was coming in too. He shared the other half of the building. And he said, wow, what happened last night? And I briefly told him he'd heard part of it on the radio. And I said, I have most of it on tape here. He said, you do? He said, let me have the tape. So I gave him the tape and the tape recorder, and I thought, uh-oh. He said, I want to take it down Wednesday and play for General Baisley. General Baisley was the 3rd Air Force commander. So he took it to the staff meeting on Wednesday and played the tape. And I worried all week. I thought, this is it. He came back, and I was waiting for him when he came back. He said, well, boss, do I still have a job? He said, yes. I said, well, what happened? He said, I played the tape for all the commanders in the UK and the general staff. And he said, they all sat there quietly and listened. And he said, the general said to me, he said, is Halt credible? He said, yes. The general said to the staff, well, what do we do? They all looked around. Nobody said anything. And the general, in his infinite wisdom, said, well, it happened off the base. It's a British affair. So when I got the tape back, I said, well, what do I do? I was hoping he'd say nothing. He said, get with Squadron Leader Moreland. Squadron Leader Moreland was a liaison officer on the base. Well, Squadron Leader Moreland had a house in Anglesey Island in Wales, and he was up there on holiday, so I had to wait about 10 days. That's why my memo's dated much later than the event. He came back, and I told him, and he didn't want anything to do with it either. So he made a few phone calls, and he came back over to my office and said, write up a memo, and we'll send it to MOD and see what they want to do. So I wrote the infamous top secret memo. Actually, it was not classified. One copy to him and a carbon manifold to me. I'm sure you all, the older people here, remember what carbon manifolds were, the old carbon paper with the thing in between. In fact, that's all I had. I didn't even keep a copy. Get away from this. He sends it to the MOD. Unbeknownst to me, he sent a copy to his boss, who was a liaison officer at 3rd Air Force, who in turn apparently made copies and shared them with some people. Well, I waited, sort of like General Half-Track in the Beetle Bailey, you know, watching the mailbox. Nothing ever happened. And I kept saying to Don Moreland, well, is the MOD interested? Is the MOD interested? Is anybody going to do anything? I was kind of relieved. He said, I can't get any answers from anybody. I said, great. Forgot all about it, or sort of forgot all about it. I mean, I put it aside. All was quiet for about 2 years. Then it raised its ugly head. What happened was 2 things. One, I had made a copy of the tape for Ted Conrad, my then boss, who wanted a copy of the tape. He put it in his desk drawer and forgot about it. Well, Sam Morgan came in and replaced him. Sam Morgan and I didn't get along very well because his son had shot out windows with a BB gun and stolen the keys to the slot machines and a few other things, and I had gotten involved in the disciplinary action. So he took the tape and was playing it at cocktail parties for entertainment. I didn't find this out till later. Somebody heard it and told somebody in the UFO community, and a gentleman by the name of Harry Harris got his hands on it. Maybe some of you know Harry. I bet you probably know Harry. Harry's, well, a little bit out there, but anyhow. Harry sold a copy of the tape to somebody who, next thing I know, it was everywhere, and now it's on the internet. Number one thing. Number two is Larry Warren, and we'll talk about him a little later, a young airman that was just come on duty with a very troubled past, and a wannabe, is my words, went back and started talking about this incident when he went back to the States. He got discharged early with a coded discharge, and that's all I'm going to say. That means he didn't fulfill his career obligation. I won't go into detail on that. He picked up the story, the best I can determine, from Bastenza and claims he was with Bastenza. Airman Bastenza was with me the whole time. He's even on the tape. Anyhow, he was talking to some UFO people in the States, and somehow or other he got connected with Larry Fawcett and Barry Greenwood. Some of you may know Barry and Larry Fawcett. He wrote the book Clear Intent. He went under the name of Art Wallace. And Larry worked with him for a while until Larry figured out that he was, how shall I say, a bit deceptive is the word to put it. And Larry dropped him. But anyhow, it was out there. And next thing I know, I get a phone call from Keith Beebe. Keith Beebe was the chief editor of News of the World. News of the World was the British equivalent of National Enquirer. Oh gosh. It hit the paper. The headlines, and I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. My life was never the same. One day I met BBC One, BBC Two, ITV, Radio Warwell, Japanese TV, German TV, and I don't know who all else. I went into hiding, it got so bad. Well, when he came to the base to see me, I found out because they called me from the gate and said, should we let him in? He wants your bio and he wants your picture. I said, oh. I ran over to Public Affairs, which is the building across the street, and pulled my bio and pulled all my pictures. He came on the base, and I talked to him briefly and said, he said, I'll give you, I forget what it was, 20,000 pounds or something for your story. I said, would you make a donation to the Air Force Aid Society for that? And he said, probably. So I called the JAG, Judge Advocate, and he said, you can't do that. Okay, so we didn't do the story. Well, he did the story anyhow. He went to Public Affairs, couldn't find my photo or bio, so he pulled the wing commander's Gordon Williams and put his picture on the front page of the News of the World, and I'll show you a picture of that. I felt badly for him. You know, he was really set up, and it was unintentional. But that's the way things go. So, now you know the background, the basic background. I've done quite a few programs, and probably the only program to get it reasonably right was Unsolved Mysteries. Most of what you see out there now and most of what you hear out there now is deception. I hate to say that. Now, the parties involved will deny this now, but I have it from them and in writing. 5 of them were taken in right after the event and taken to the OSI office. Somebody from, according to them, naval intelligence, and that would make sense because the military divides up the world as far as responsibilities. In England, from an intelligence standpoint, was a Navy responsibility. But a Navy commander was there, somebody from M5 or M3 or whatever was there. They were hypnotized and injected with what we think was sodium pentothal. I'm firmly convinced that what happened in the forest, or what happened then, or some combination thereof, they've never been the same since. I knew Jim Penniston very well because I spent a lot of time in the command post with him. He was the police liaison. He was a rising star. He was the guy they sent down to the command post to look out for police affairs and the interface with the police. So I worked with him, gosh, I can't tell you how many hours. And he was fantastic to work with. After this event and all that unfolded, he was never the same. Ended up getting divorced. Personal life went down the tubes. Didn't get promoted anymore, got in a lot of trouble. I mean, it just ruined his life. Similar thing, Burroughs hasn't done much better. Cabanas somewhat escaped it. He disappeared, got out of the service, went back to become, I believe, a border guard or something. Larry Warren, there's another one. Larry Warren, if he was there at all, was way in the background somewhere and picked up the story. He and Peter Robbins wrote a book called Left at the East Gate. The title should be Left at the Gate. There are so many glaring errors, so many, as some people say, fanciful stories. I mean, it ranges everywhere from hundreds of people were out there, including 50 or 100 RAF people. Read the book. The only RAF guy within miles was Donald Moreland, the squadron leader, and he was in Wales. There were no RAF people there. There were no video cameras or people with cameras and tripods there. The only one that had a camera was Penniston the first night, and Neville's with me. Penniston's film was turned into the photo lab and was all fogged. Neville's film, now Neville's developed his own film, so somebody had to be pretty skilled here. It was fogged. None of the pictures came out, supposedly. I've heard from other sources that some of the pictures of Penniston's did come out, but I can't prove that. So, anyhow, back to the book, Left at the East Gate. Gordon Williams, the wing commander, he claims was there. He was at a social event. He and I even talked about it the next day, and I know he wasn't there. He claims that Mel Zichter, the squadron commander for the security police, was there. He stayed at the party. He had to give out awards. He claims that people disappeared that were out there. Nobody disappeared. He claims that people were seriously injured. Show me who was injured. He claims he was taken to an underground bunker in the photo lab. Turn to the middle of his book and look at the pictures. The picture of the photo lab is actually the hardened command post. The hardened command post sits on 4 or 5 feet of reinforced concrete. I know every inch of it. There is no elevator and nothing underneath it. And in fact, if you'd like to go there today, it's open as a museum. You can go look for yourself. In fact, if there were underground caverns like are described, let's face it, this is right next to the sea and below sea level. There'd have to be horrendous pumps to keep the thing dry. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. What I'm trying to tell you is somebody has gone, or something, or some agency has gone to great troubles to discredit this incident. Now, those guys are on the circuit now. They become entertainers. I refuse to be involved in the current book they're writing because I don't think it's going to be factual. It'll do a great disservice to you and to me and to everybody else. So, what do? It's kind of frustrating. This is one of the 3 plaster casts. Jim Penniston knew nobody would believe him, or thought nobody would believe him. So he had a house in Ipswich, and his landlord was a plasterer of all things. So he went to his landlord and got plaster of Paris and went back out the next morning and made plaster casts of the 3 indentations. And here is one of them. The reason I have this one is he made 3. This one's number 2. One of the other ones he had at the house disappeared mysteriously. So the 3rd one, when he left Bentwaters, he put it in a sealed box, put it inside another box and taped it up, put it inside one of those great big wooden shipping containers, which was nailed and shut and caulked and shipped back. When he opened it at the other end, it was still sealed and caulked, but the plaster cast was missing. Somebody has gone to great lengths. That's the tower at the weapons control area. That's manned 24/7. All the controls for the sensors, and I'll show you some of the fence and things, it's up there. It's about 80 feet tall. It has a pretty good view from there. The gentleman that was in the tower that night, Rick Bobo, saw something red, something glowing, saw it go into the forest. That's another shot of it. This is a typical fence. This is the long side. This is 8 or 10 feet chain link, concertina or razor wire, sensors here, sensors on that fence, pretty secure. The only way to get in there without being caught or noticed probably would drop in with a silent helicopter or something of that nature, or run through the fence with something big and strong. That's the front entry gate. This is what we called hut row. This is where we kept things we didn't talk about. Now, I stood here. We were back here in the forest when we saw the object, and it went through the trees, then it went out into this field. This field was plowed at that time. There's the farmer's house. The lighthouse is over there. We stood right here and watched the object, and the object was out here somewhere when it exploded. The objects to the north were up here. The objects to the south were out here. Bentwaters base was over here somewhere. Now, there's something very interesting about this Orford Island where that lighthouse is. That was a highly classified British site during the Second World War and soon thereafter. That's where they did their experimental work on nuclear triggers and all sorts of interesting research work. Now, what attracted these objects to that area? It's a very good question. It could be any one combination of what we kept on the base in the bunkers. Does it tie into witchcraft? Does it tie into experimental radar? Does it tie into the nuclear power plant? I thought about all these things. The last time I was back in England, I sat down with a group that was working on a project, and they brought one of the local, for lack of a better term, I'll say ufologists, somebody that's dedicated their life to UFOs. Now, they're somewhat a little bit out of the mainstream, but they've done a lot of work. And they did a regression hypnosis on her. And one of the things that came out of that session is that that area is a portal, according to her. Some type of portal from another dimension or another place. Now, I can't comment. I can just tell you what I've picked up. But there is definitely something there. So many people have contacted me after the fact, even up until now. I was a teenager in 1961, the dependent son of so-and-so. We went out of the forest one night to party, and you won't believe we saw these objects. They scared the you-know-what out of us, and we've never gone back since. Or some of the British people saying, including the local head constable, said, I've been tracked in my car at night. Myself and another car were followed. It was right on top of our car, and it followed us for a mile or two. We got out, and it disappeared. I know I saw something. I don't know. It's a strange area. That's all I can say. I have more questions than I do answers, but what can I say?
I'm Charles Halt. I'm a retired Air Force colonel.
All right, and you are famous for the Rendlesham Forest incident. Can you just explain just a little bit about that for context?
Basically, what happened was that we initially thought there was a downed aircraft that was investigated, and there was a strange craft in the forest. Follow up 2 nights later, some funny things happened, things that can't be explained. Balls of light, so to speak, that moved through the forest, that winked and blinked, sort of appeared to be shedding molten metal, and then silently exploded into 5 white objects. There were objects in the sky that turned from elliptical shape to round, had multicolored lights that moved in a pattern, sort of like a grid search, made sharp angular turns at very, very high speed. In other words, pulling a lot of G's, more than any human could withstand. And one of the objects in the sky sent down a laser-like beam at our feet. It had us quite concerned. We didn't know whether it was a signal, a warning, a threat, what it was. Other beams came down on other parts of the base, some in or near the weapons storage area. This all took place over a 3 or 4 hour period. The objects were in the sky from about, I'm guessing, around 11:30, 12 o'clock to about 3 or 4 in the morning. At that time, I was told there were no indications on radar. Nobody else knew anything. Nobody did anything. I later found out that after the air traffic controllers retired, that they picked up the objects on the scope, saw it go across the scope, a 60-mile scope in about 4 seconds, come back across the scope again. They visually saw it. They saw it go into the forest. More people have come forward, especially security police, and identified having seen strange objects.
Right. So what was your job while you were there, while this was going on?
Basically what happened in the spring of 1980, I was reassigned from the Pentagon to RAF Base as the Deputy Base Commander at RAF Bentwaters. RAF Bentwaters is home of the 81st TAC Fighter Wing. At that time, it was the largest fighter wing in the free world. Comprised of 2 bases in England, RAF Bentwaters, RAF Woodbridge, geographically separated by the equivalent of national forest. There were also 4 forward operating locations in Germany where we kept airplanes and crews on standby ready to go if necessary. The concept was if the Eastern Bloc countries came to the Fulda Gap, we would mobilize the 81st TAC Fighter Wing and move forward to the 6 locations in Germany and go kill armor. The base would then be backfilled by strike aircraft, fighter aircraft, that day's F-4s and F-16s, and they would carry the war to wherever it was needed with whatever was needed.
That was really scary. Just when you said that, that's really scary.
That's scary.
Yeah.
It was a very active time there. Keep in mind, this was the peak of the Cold
That's
War.
right.
Things were going crazy in Poland. All sorts of things were happening all over the world. We exercised constantly. We never knew when we were going to really have to deploy. And in fact, there were a couple of scares where we thought we were going to. But it still was an enjoyable tour.
Right.
But there was a downside to it, and that was the constant threat and exercising and all the things that came with that.
I'm going to take a wild guess, being a military man myself, that they would not put an unstable man in your position in a place like that.
All the senior officers and the people that were involved in certain activities were PRP certified, personal reliability certified.
Including yourself.
Including myself. Any instance of misbehavior, anything from a drunk incident, DUI or something, or any kind of, you name it, anything really of any significance, any type of medication, you would be decertified automatically and recertified if appropriate.
Right. Okay.
In fact, I can't believe that none of us were why we weren't decertified from what happened. We came back and tell this what really appears to be a wild tale,
Right.
and we were not decertified.
So my questions today really have more to do with you personally. I've seen and read, that this is a pretty famous case in certain circles and lots of circles. So I wanted to know, a lot of people that have sightings, they have issues afterward, psychological, emotional, whatnot. And having spent time with you over the last, 2 days here, you seem to have handled it different. So I'd really like to know how it affected. I mean, I've seen the recreations of you talking into the thing, looking at a UFO, looking at a UAP, looking at something that does not appear to be from this earth, speaking calmly into the thing, and then I see you here today speaking about it like it happened and it's no big deal. So how did it affect you?
Well, when the incident unfolded, I have to tell you, I may not have shown it, but we were very excited. In fact, something kind of funny happened several years later. I won't mention the name, but one of the major studios did a voice stress analysis of my tape, and they said, you guys went off the chart in certain areas when certain things were happening, and that's true. But keep in mind, we were in the military and we had an obligation whenever we tried to approach the object. We actually moved forward and we didn't run and hide like some people said or cower down. We went forward to try and find out. We knew there was some risk involved, but we wanted to find out what was going on. We had to have some answers. We still haven't gotten them, obviously.
Were you afraid?
I'm not so sure I would be afraid. I'm very concerned. Actually, probably my biggest concern is nobody's going to believe this. What's this going to do to my career? Because I knew from past experience people that reported UFOs had career problems.
Well, since you opened that can of worms, let's talk about your career. What did it affect it?
Fortunately, the people I work for, were still impressed with me, and I did, I guess, a good job. They thought so. They gave me good report cards, so to speak. And it did not become public knowledge until after I'd been promoted to colonel. I can assure you, if it had made the headlines anywhere, I would not have been promoted to colonel.
What was were you a major at the?
No, I was a lieutenant colonel at the time.
Lieutenant colonel, okay. Lieutenant colonel. And did it, I mean, some of your assignments after that, do you feel like it was guided by this at all? I mean, did they put you behind a desk somewhere?
No,
they didn't try to stick you away or anything?
No. I went on to become the director, inspections director for the DODIG with total inspection oversight of the entire Department of Defense. All agencies, all services. Did organizational inspections of DIA, NSA, along with other things, to include child care and a bunch of other things that are unrelated.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it did not affect my career. Everybody kind of joked about it, and honestly, I think most of the senior leadership acknowledge the fact that there are such things as UFOs. There's something out there we don't know.
Do you think that they were afraid of you? That's why they didn't say much? And was there an unsaid, Chuck, keep your mouth shut and we'll take care of you? Was there anything that you felt like that at all?
Never. The closest I ever came to a debriefing, is best way to call it, is John Alexander. You may know John. Dr. Alexander, retired Army colonel, non-lethal weapons guy, came out to Washington as a fellow colonel to talk to me about what happened. But I think more now when I look back on it, I've got to know John, is that he was really just trying to find out and dig up more information for some books he was writing and different things. When I left the military, I was given a very thorough debriefing because of things I was involved in. I can't even mention some of them now, but what I had knowledge of. And I asked the debriefers, I said, may I talk about the incident at Bentwaters? And they looked at each other and said, Bentwaters what? I said, well, there was a UFO incident at Bentwaters, and I was involved in the middle of the thing, one of these things you sort of fall into. And they said, give me this treatment. So I was approached in, I think it was 1990, by Unsolved Mysteries to do a program. So I went to my big boss, the DODIG, and said, hey, boss, I've been approached to do this program. Keep in mind, I'm on active duty in a sensitive position. He said, what? What's this all about? So, we sat down on his couch, and an hour later, he said, very interesting. He said, go ahead and do it. I did it.
You were on active duty?
I was on active duty. And it turned out to be their highest rated program they've ever done.
Wow. Active duty?
I was on active duty then. I didn't go in uniform.
Right. I couldn't even talk
They
to
hired
the
an
boss when I was
they hired an actor. I didn't do it. I went out as a technical consultant
I see.
to help them get it right. And they got it fairly close.
So this didn't affect you personally. I mean, you've told me that you put it on the shelf.
Yeah, I didn't let it affect me. Now, unfortunately, some of the 4 or 5 of the enlisted players, the primary players there, were giving a debriefing that I think between that and whatever happened in the forest, they've never been the same. And I knew several of them very, very well.
Were they hurt emotionally or physically or mentally?
It caused marriage problems, it caused personal problems, it derailed their careers. Yes. One particular one, I won't mention his name, it was one of the few enlisted people that I made sure that the base commander endorsed his report card. He was going places. He never went above tech sergeant.
Why them and not you? Why were they hurt so bad?
That's a good question. Probably because of my rank, probably because 1 or 2 of them, maybe all of them, were easily manipulated and used for disinformation.
That's a shame. Do you wish that this never happened to you?
Yes. In fact, whenever they went to release, 3rd Air Force had a copy of the memo. A bootleg copy is the best way to describe it. And a gentleman by the name of Larry Fawcett came in under FOIA to get the copy from Bentwaters. So I knew about it. And Jack Cochran, who was then the base commander and a good friend, wrote back and said, we have nothing here. And then we didn't. We had no official files. The only thing I had was an onion skin or carbon manifold, if you remember those days, of my memo. In fact, to get my memo, when I wanted to give it to somebody, I had to go put the letterhead on and reproduce it. But anyhow, he came in and we said we didn't have it. We didn't. I had a copy at home. They found out there was a copy at 3rd Air Force, and they went in, and the acting 3rd Air Force commander, Pete Bent, who was a good personal friend of mine, called me up and says, I'm going to have to release your memo. And I was angry. I said, how did you get it? He said, well, the RAF liaison officer gave a copy to so-and-so and a copy, and somebody talked, and he said, I'm going to have to release it. I said, Pete, burn it. I said, you release that, and your life and mine will never be the same. He said, I have to release it. I said, oh. The very next day I met ITV, BBC One, BBC Two, German TV, Japanese TV, Radio Orwell, and the list goes on and on and on.
How did they treat you?
I had to go into hiding almost.
What did people treat, I mean, so as far as the media and these people that, I mean, you became a celebrity there, did they treat you fairly?
The media?
Yeah.
No, of course not. The media did what they did to, to sell papers or to get whatever.
They tried to make you look like a kook.
Oh, yes. There's a real good incident, I have to tell you. Keith Beebe, who was one of the prime reporters for the News of the World. Now, you may not be from News of the World's like the National Enquirer. Yeah. It's now defunct thanks to some of their techniques. But anyhow, he called me up and said, I'd like to talk to you. Well, I was interested in talking to him because he said, I'll pay you. I said, I'll make you a deal. If you make a donation to the Air Force Aid Society, maybe I'll give you a story. I'd clean it up a little bit and tell you some things. He said, maybe we can do something. So he called from the gate. The gate called me actually and said, this guy's out here at the gate wants your biography and dossier and this, that, and so forth, your picture. I said, oh my God. So I ran over to Public Affairs and pulled my whole file out of the cabinet and took it back to the office. He came in, we talked briefly, we couldn't reach an agreement, and I said, bye. He went over to Public Affairs to get my picture and to get my biography, and it wasn't there. So he took Gordon Williams, the wing commander's folder, and put his picture on the front page of News of the World. Air Force chief says UFO lands in Suffolk or something to that effect. Poor Gordon Williams. I felt badly. If I'd have known they were going to do that, I'd have pulled his file too. So, what can you say? You can't cover every base,
Yeah. Oh, man. So, I've kind of covered this already, but I want to make sure I got it right. And with some of the other speakers, I've kind of talked about how the U.S. handles or doesn't handle UFO sightings at all, really, in any way.
Well, I think they do.
What's that?
I think they do.
How so?
I think sighting information is collected from numerous sources, OSI, CIA, DIA, I can give you about 20 more organizations, FBI, and I think it's picked up by a central organization, which I don't think it's Majestic 12 or whatever, but I think there is a probably contract organization, so it's safe from FOIA or anything else, made up of probably retired senior military and civil service people or politicians, and that they do have some type of a program to monitor, to whatever. I'm not sure to what extent. I'm firmly convinced of that. And I go round and round with John Alexander on that. He wrote a very good book as far as the technical, here's how the government works and all, and if you read it, you'll have a better understanding of bureaucracy.
Yeah, I have.
The government isn't the government, it isn't they, it's 100,000, 200,000 or whatever it is, people all playing their own game. The services fight over money, they fight over mission, they fight over territory, they fight over, you name it. For instance, the guys that debriefed the 5 airmen that were involved, NIS was involved, or NCIS, whatever you want to call them these days, because Naval Intelligence had England, that was their territory, so to speak, their turf. The Air Force has somewhere else. Somebody said, well, why would Navy come to an Air Force base? Very simple. That's the guy that reports to whoever in the embassy is from CIA or whatever, NSA. So.
In any way after this, did they completely ignore the incident, or were you told not to speak about this or advised not to speak about this?
Never been advised, never been told by an official. Now, I've had friends say, man, you're stupid for talking about this. It's, as I've said earlier, it's like a tar baby. You touch it and it sticks to you. You don't never get rid of it.
Do you believe that there is a misinformation campaign against UFOs in general in this country?
Yes, I definitely do.
You have any more you want to talk about with that?
Well, I can't give you too many details because I don't have the details. It's so highly compartmentalized you'll never find out unless somebody wants you to find out. If you get into NSA or DIA, you'll find every time you open the door, there's more doors.
Right. What would you like to see changed about that? You're talking about this and have been talking about this for a long time, so why are you so committed to it? Because I know that you're a target. By your own admission, someone's collected information on you.
Oh.
They're watching you.
Google my name and see what happens.
Yeah. So
my kids laugh about it.
Yeah. Why keep doing it?
To get the word out. I don't think you're ever going to get disclosure unless there's a really serious incident where they can't be covered up. The people that cover these things up are very skillful. Trust me, they're extremely skillful. They'll go to great ends. But I think probably the only approach, what I would like to see happen basically, is to have a very high-level group of very eminent scientists, people with some real pull and real brains to study this and to, put things together and look at all the cases that are really solid cases and see what they can come up with.
People like who?
Well, I'm not going to mention any names, but there are certainly enough people out there that are qualified to do that sort of thing.
You talk about these people covering things up. They go to great lengths. What lengths are we talking about? Are we talking about killing people?
Well, we're talking about brainwashing, or the equivalent. We're talking about monitoring people. There's no doubt people mess with at least 2 or 3 of the airmen's careers, something big time. Jim Penniston made 3 plaster casts of the indentations this supposed craft made in the forest. I have one of them. I have it with me here. I'm going to show you later on. His 2 have disappeared. One of them was in his whole baggage inside a box, sealed, inside a big box, taped, inside a nail-tight shipping container with caulking seal around it. When they opened the box, guess what? It was gone. Now explain that. Nothing else was missing. I find it hard to believe, but it's gone. The reason he gave me one is because the first one disappeared mysteriously and he only had 2 left. So he gave me one, said, here, you hold on to this. They may not find it if you have it.
They? Who is they?
I don't know who they are. That's the problem. They may not be one group. They may be a small group of whatever in this organization or that organization. I put the OSI commander, who was a personal friend of mine, on the spot whenever this happened. I said, do you have any interest in this? Are you involved in this? And all? He says, we don't get involved in this kind of stuff. Well, I learned later that, guess where they were taken for interrogation. Now, our OSI people didn't do it. The experts came in, but they did it in their building. I don't know anything about it. Come on.
What would you like to see changed? What do you want?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'd like to see a panel of very eminent people that are highly qualified to investigate and to make public their findings. It may take a long time. There's things out there, we know that.
The government. You want this to be government sponsored or privately sponsored?
I don't think it matters to me. I would be suspect if it were government sponsored.
Have you had any other experiences since?
No.
Not one.
No, but I don't go around looking in the sky all the time.
Right.
I'm not like some people that every time they turn a corner they see a UFO.
Right.
Well, there may be something to that. Maybe they attract them. I don't know.
Right.
I'm firmly convinced there's something about that area. It's either a hotspot, a portal, or something. Because I've had so many people, some I knew, some I don't, but have forwarded me stuff saying, when I was attendant at RAF Bentwaters in 1989 or 1983 or this and that, this happened and here's what we saw, you won't believe it. Or local people that I know say, you know what, we see that all the time. People in the little village of Ike just down the road say that.
So the way we deal with things here in the States, the culture that we've created, it hurts people. And they're willing to hurt people to keep this under wraps.
Oh yes. There's no doubt in my mind.
Okay, I only have a couple more questions for you. One is, do you believe or do you know that there are craft flying in our skies that are made with non-human technology?
I don't know that for a fact, but I certainly suspect it. Because I've only had one experience. Everything else I know is secondhand.
Was anything that you know of capable of doing what you saw?
No.
Anywhere
Nothing.
close to it?
Nothing, even today. Not to move at, say, 3,000 or 4,000 mile an hour from go 0 to that and like that. Make 90-degree turns at very, very high speed, pulling 20, 30, 40 Gs. No.
Impossible.
Impossible with a human inside.
Do you think, even at that time, that it could have been an unmanned vehicle, a drone or whatever they had back then?
It certainly could have been a drone. It certainly could have. The small object we saw in the field was not large enough for anything humanoid to be in. It was, my guess is, no bigger than about that big. But it was definitely under intelligent control. It bobbed up and down and went through the forest, avoiding the trees. It came toward us, it receded away, and then it exploded. None of it makes logical sense.
Could a drone that we make go 3,000 miles an hour?
No, I don't think so. No. Even the SRAM rockets and things, I don't think can go. I don't know what their speed limit is, but no.
You definitely don't think this was man-made.
No, it definitely was not man-made.
I have one more question, and I would like a one-word answer, if you can give it to me. Do you believe that extraterrestrials, aliens from other planets, and from other worlds exist?
Yes. Or another dimension.